Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Shanna, and I am here on behalf of Taika Translations. I'm so excited to have Aubrey, Brandy, and Maggie here with us tonight. They are going to talk to us tonight about how to lead with accessibility and inclusivity. Yes. Sorry, did someone say something?
I think we
Okay.
have a little echo.
Okay. And they are going to talk about how that can impact the impact that it has on people with disabilities in our world today. I'm sure that there is going to be some of you with questions, and you can go ahead and send those questions through, but we will get to the questions and answers at the end of our discussion. So don't think we are ignoring you. We're just going to get to those at the end. Um, I would like Aubrey just to take a minute and I want you to introduce yourself to all of us and tell us a little bit about the work that you do or have done in the past.
Hello, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to be speaking to you tonight. My name is Aubrey. I'm a graduate of Lakeland Community College in Ohio. I have worked with disabled clients for over 4 years. Their disabilities have ranged from dyslexia to ADHD to legal blindness. A common denominator between all my clients, no matter their age, is that they all desire to be respected, understood, and valued by others. These are things that those in the disabled community may fail to see or feel in the workplace or school system at large. But I've come to appreciate that persons with disabilities often have unique insights that can contribute to more effective and efficient solutions. And they often bring perspectives and ideas, leading to increased innovation and creative problem solving. So these traits are invaluable to the workplace and society in general. So it has been a pleasure working with this community, and I look forward to speaking about it more tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all of that. Can you provide a brief overview of why accessibility and inclusivity is so important in today's world?
Great question. A report
Mhm.
done in 2023 regarding the workforce here in the United States said that 22.5% of employed workers were disabled. This highlights that, unlike the workforce in times past, those with disabilities are being recognized for their talents, strength, and intellects in the modern workforce. And it's our job to support and enhance those talents and skills by creating and maintaining an environment that is inclusive and accessible for all. And inclusive work environments where all employees feel valued and supported. Usually, they have higher employee morale and retention. And providing accommodations and support can improve job satisfaction and loyalty among employees with disabilities. And I've come to learn that accommodations in regarding disabled employees are not only physical, but they can be mental and emotional. Due to their disabilities, at times our workmates or clients may feel a high level of frustration or discouragement, and this may cause incorporation on their part or even an outburst of strong emotion. But in those moments, we can accommodate and validate their feelings by responding with patience and kindness. And usually, this just leads all together to a peaceful and good work environment for all.
Yeah, I love that. Everyone wants to feel included. So, yes, I love that. Okay, Brandy, can you just take a minute and introduce yourself as well and just tell us about some of the work that you have done relating to this topic as well?
Sure. So my name is Brandy Flynn. I am a middle-aged white female with blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm wearing a coral top and glasses with a white headset. Um, Basically, for the last, I've had 16 years in quality engineering management in manufacturing areas, and I left that field to basically become a visual interpreter. Um, some agencies refer to a visual interpreter as a reader, someone that provides visual details for individuals who are blind or have low vision. Um, Basically, my technical background really gives me that um, attention to detail to be able to interpret a lot of things that maybe someone who's not familiar with a more technical area may not be able to interpret. They might not be able to kind of read charts and graphs and things like that, that for blind folks that may need that information. So I've been doing that for the last several years. I've worked directly one-on-one with individuals who have blindness, and I've also worked on projects doing audio description and things like that to kind of bring more accessibility into the workplace.
Okay. I loved when you yourself, how you described what you're wearing and what is on your head and what you look like. I love that because that I feel like is exactly what you do for work. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Um, what are some good practices for ensuring accessibility in communications?
I think a lot of us really focus on the visual when it comes to, Instagram and Facebook, and we really tend to put out everything in a visual manner without taking into account that we, you know, should provide those visual descriptions along with it. So, including alt text for pictures. If you're sending out an email and you have a logo within your email, including an alt text that describes exactly what that logo is, um, just ensuring that there is a description of any visual item on your website. A lot of websites have issues where a box that you're supposed to fill in your name, it's not identified. So screen readers are not able to pick up on what they're supposed to fill in on that box.
Mhm.
Um, and surprisingly, all computers come with a screen reader. It's built into Windows. It's built into your Mac. Um, your phone has a screen reader as well. Um, Sometimes the best way to kind of figure things out and see if what you're sending out is accessible is to turn on that narrator and just navigate through your website, your email, any kind of information that you're sending out to the public that you want to make sure is accessible to someone who is blind or maybe needs high contrast. you know Making sure that your information is in high contrast rather than having, say, gray background and white text is really hard for someone who has vision to read. Um, so there's a lot of ways to really do that. Hit Windows Control Enter, and that will turn on your narrator, and it will
Wow.
read your screen.
Okay. I
Um,
didn't even know that.
yeah, so that's kind of a quick and easy way. It's not as good of a screen reader as JAWS, which is it's a subscription. You pay for that. You pay for your software for JAWS, which is the most used screen reader for most individuals. Um, but yeah, it's still has its issues, and it does get hung up on certain things, and that is where a visual interpreter can come in and really provide that additional, hey, I've got a captcha. it
Yeah.
as a sighted person, I struggle with captchas sometimes. Can you imagine what the screen reader just doesn't want to function on something like that? So
Yeah,
um
exactly.
anytime you want to test out your communications, you can always turn on your narrator and test it. Just check it out. and it'll really surprise you at how much it finds.
Awesome. Okay. I love that. I'm going to have to try that. Can you share a personal experience or project where accessibility was like significantly improved, or how it improved someone's experience or life that you have worked with?
Yeah. So I worked with an individual who works at the DOT, who has blindness, and he was taking a course online through Cornell, and the screen reader, I don't. It's very difficult to kind of go through. uh, If you've been on like a college course online, they're very they have lots of tabs, lots of menus, lots of different little pop-out boxes and things like that. And JAWS is a very left to right, rows straight down, and it would go through every menu for every time we changed the screen. So every time you go forward on the tab on the training, it would get stuck and it would go back to the top and start over from the top. So you can imagine how frustrating that can be for someone who is trying to take a class, who's trying
Yeah.
to, everything is on video now. So they want to do videos, but there's no real visual description of those videos. So um, by accessing that and just going in and hitting the next button, taking JAWS out of the out of the equation so that it saved a lot of time, providing the visual description for any videos that were playing, describing any of the charts and graphs and things like that while they were going through the training. He was able to finish that even though he was given an additional amount of time because of the extensive JAWS issues. He was able to finish that. There was no interference as far as like, you know, there was no help as far as me doing any of the classwork. It was 100% on him. I'm clicking a button, asking the questions, clicking the answer that he tells me. So that whole class, he was able to complete that within the time frame that a sighted person would be able to do that as well.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, I can see how it could be so confusing, like you were saying with the jaws having to like hear both and try to jump. Like that would be so confusing. So
Yeah.
I love that you shared that. Thank you for sharing that with us. I see that there's a comment here, and I said we would do comments at the end, but I feel like it would be great to talk about this right now. Are there tools that we can use to know if our communication is accessible? Can you touch on that?
Yeah. So, like I was saying, if you want to test out for yourself, there is a built-in narrator. If you have a Windows computer, there's a built-in narrator on your Mac computer that you can go in and turn that on and see if it's accessible for a screen reader. As far as uh, I don't know if you're referencing like an email or something like that. If you want to maybe put more detail on what type of communication you're referring to. I know that alt text is very important when it comes to using any photos or images in your emails. Um, and just testing out, making sure that you've got any visual effects listed out so that there is some sort of visual description included.
Okay,
If I can just add a little bit, so we can also take an online audit like of your website, and it will just show you the problems that you have, and of course you have your own eyes just to see. Like Brandon was mentioning, don't depend on the color at all, especially if you just use a color to differentiate things. Like I know we have faced it in our company, actually internally. We had a great system of color coding of all the projects. Well, we had a person join us who is colorblind, and of course, we cannot forget about that. those people. So we understood that our whole system just crumbled because it had completely 0 point at that at the time. He just couldn't understand. So just make sure that you don't depend on the colors. Don't make this like Brandon was mentioning, the contrast. Remember that sometimes those online audits, they'll check your website, but they might not identify some issues that you can see with your personal eye. Like you can see the colors, like sometimes it will not identify it perfectly. And of course, just remember that everything that goes out should also be accessible for the deaf community. So just make sure that you have captions as well. And I know like YouTube provides captions, but if we can read them ourselves, we can understand that sometimes they just completely use wrong words. So if you want to put some quality output and you want people to understand that, just make sure that those are actual captions that you add as a SRT file.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. We're going to talk actually more about the deaf a little bit. But I wanted to ask, we're just going to change gears just a little bit and ask about services specifically for the blind. So Brandy, can you explain what audio description is and why it's so important for the blind?
So audio description is essentially a verbal description of everything that is visual, whether it's a video or if you have a slideshow presentation. Most people, like throughout my entire career, I've always been told, don't read off your slides. Don't read your slides. Just give the gist. Everybody can read it, when you're doing a presentation. And that has always been drilled into my head because it's like, oh, we want to keep everyone engaged, but so don't just read your slides. Well, that can be a big problem whenever you have someone in the audience who is blind, has low vision. So it's important that when you're doing a training video, when you're doing meetings, any type of presentation where you're utilizing slideshows, you're using charts and graphs, you have multiple speakers, that kind of thing. You want to make sure that you're providing that visual detail, that visual information, because
So do you, sorry,
oh,
can I ask,
sorry, go ahead.
so when you do that, do you like say there's a graph, or like what do you say to describe that?
So, and that's where my technical background comes into play, because I will actually read the graph and interpret what it is saying. So if it is just a chart, a table, I'll read the headers. I will describe all of the headers, all of um, the labels on the left axis. I'll describe any details that are listed in there, and I will break it down to make sure that the data is not really glossed over. Because I know a lot of times, and I've seen it just recently, doing an audio description for a training presentation where they said, as you can see in the graph, and kind of just glossed over the data and then moved on to the next slide. So for audio description, I will describe exactly what type of chart it is, whether it's a pie chart. We have a pie chart. It is broken into three equal pieces. The first piece is number of, I don't know, number of pieces of widgets that we just made, and then the other is number of defects, and then the third is number of reworked items. That kind of thing, where you just go in and you give the full description. You don't leave out any details, because you want to make sure that they can understand what's being talked about.
Yes.
We tend to kind of just, like, most people are very visual and just look at the chart and they say, oh, okay, yeah, and they move on. But it's important when you're doing any kind of training that you're including those visual details for
Yes.
anyone who's going to watch this later on, they may be listening to the audio and saying, what chart are they talking about? I don't have any details on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I love that, especially because I'm a very visual learner. And so that does help a lot of people. So thank you for sharing that. What are some key considerations when writing a script for audio description?
I mean, it's pretty basic. Say what you see. So there's going to be for meetings, for example, I will describe the speaker and then I will describe what's on the actual slide. So as long as the speaker is talking, I will describe them once. Beyond that, I'm focusing only on the slide and the details that they're discussing. And they may be reading the exact information off the slide, but I still put every detail into that to make sure that nothing is missed, nothing gets glossed over.
Yeah. Okay.
So the main thing is to ensure that you're including all of the relevant details. If there's a whole list of little, all of the members that have joined, I'm not going to describe those because
Yeah.
they're not part of the presentation. They're not the important key information. So
It's too much.
yeah, it's definitely focusing on the key information.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I add a small comment?
Yeah.
Is that fine? For Brandy, so when we started working with Brandy, before I thought I'm a great script writer. I've written some scripts like Kids Place, things like that. So I thought I can just write a script myself. I mean, how hard can it be? You have, especially with a presentation, you have the slides, and then my brain was just boiling because, I understand, I see it from my perspective, I know how it looks, and then people like to add those kind of clip art things, to the slides, and you're like, okay, so what is it? Is it the head with a question mark coming out of it? How do you describe that?
Yeah. I see a lot of that in these training presentations, a lot of clip art. One fun thing for me is doing the National Park Service training videos. Some of those, they have beautiful scenery, and I will go and research what that scenery is. What is that photo from? I want to know the exact location so that I can not just describe it, but tell them where it is. So those are the kind of things that, everyone, I love the photos that I see in there, but I'm like, oh, wow, that's Denali. I go and I look things up to make sure that I am describing the correct place, the correct information. That's just the quality manager in me that I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. But yeah, those little details that people throw in, you want to make sure that they're included, logos and that kind of thing.
Okay. So for videos that have audio, do you have to time the description to match up? How do you make that all kind of come together?
I time it. I put the exact timestamp for where the visual item appears. So the timestamp and the audio, those are married up. Daniel does those. He marries up the audio, the visual. I put the timestamps and transcribe the exact script of the visual details. So those are yeah.
So how we do that in real life? There's no way to fit it in. So we just find the timestamps, like Brandy's saying, and we will just pause everything. We'll just freeze the screen, and that's where we'll put the audio description, and then unfreeze it.
Okay.
So sometimes a little bit of a confusion can happen when you have a mixed audience of people that are blind and people that are deaf. So how do you do with that at that point? Because one of them needs the captions and they can understand what in the world is happening and why is it frozen. So then you just kind of recaption as well, audio description as well. So the presentation that's 1 hour, it can be 2 hours long at that point, with all the audio descriptions put into that.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Thank you so much. Okay, Aubrey. We have not given you a lot of chances to talk, so this is going to be for you. What are the challenges that you have faced in working with the blind, and why is virtual assistance so crucial?
Okay, well, thankfully, my client has a very driven and friendly personality. He doesn't often let his frustrations overcome him, but I have found this could be an issue working with the blind. They can become especially frustrated or impatient with technology because I think their routines are based on consistency and organization. And if something pops up that's out of the norm, it can kind of frustrate them or throw them off course, especially when it comes to technology. But that's why my job as a virtual assistant is so important because things are ever changing and even improving. So while something may change, this may not always be a negative thing. And if the client has a good understanding or can build a good understanding of how to work this new technology or how to function with any improvement done on a specific application, then they can overcome the frustration. So, if there's, for instance, with my client, Zoom is extremely hard to navigate for him. And it seems that Teams works better for him, but Zoom especially is difficult. And since it is not user friendly, oftentimes when he has a Zoom meeting, I'll have to log in for him and make sure his mic is on or his camera is on. But if it's possible to help the client learn to navigate a specific application, that's my job as a virtual assistant to help him do that in that way.
Okay, thank you. Do you feel like it is all ages that is hard with like technology specifically? Do you feel like it's all ages, or do you feel like it's more like the younger or older generation? Like, who do you feel like it affects the most?
It depends. I think younger children, sometimes it shocks you. They'll be like 2 years old and they're like, this is how you screen share or something like that. But I think with disabilities, it can range between all ages. Um, I worked with students that have dyslexia. So this presents a challenge, them learning how to navigate instructions or various things on websites because of the dyslexia. The
Yeah.
words are kind of mixed up for them. And then with someone blind who's older, his issue comes in a different form because not being able to see exactly what he's navigating. So I think especially for those with disabilities, it varies between ages. But I think the important thing is that they are taught, or at least helped to be taught. Sometimes I think in times past, people felt that people with certain disabilities could never learn. They just won't be able to do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
sometimes they need someone to actually sit down and take the time to help them navigate as best as they can through a specific technological change.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see why this is so important. Can you explain your role as a virtual assistant for the blind?
Yeah, so day to day, I help my client organize his schedule, respond and format emails, manage a Google Teams resource platform for the disabled community in his work sector, and prepare and schedule meetings with colleagues. And my client, he specifically, where he works, he specifically has a target group of disabled colleagues that work along with him. So they too may have various disabilities. So he works hard to keep them informed of specific provisions that could benefit them in their work sector. And I think that's a good work that he's doing as well, because he has a disability he's dealing with, but he's helping others with disabilities.
Yeah.
And so we're both busy navigating that with his disability. But on the day to day, my goal is to help him feel competent to do his job. And if there's something he has questions with, like Brandy mentioned, he may receive an email. And like she said, the words may be there, and there's a reader, JAWS, that may be able to read out what the words say, but it may be accompanied by a picture or a link. And he probably may not be able to click that link and see where it takes him or things like that. So it's my job to notice the details that may be missed by the reader that's provided on his computer.
Awesome. That kind of answers my question. I was going to ask, can you explain how that impacts the employee's experience and how you feel it can help them feel more included in the organization that they're a part of? So I feel like you kind of answered that. Have they told you like how much it helps them and how much more like they feel included in their organization? Like, have they told you that?
He has expressed appreciation, which I appreciate. It just brought to mind something that happened this past week at his job. They had a series of meetings and trainings, and he also did workshops with his colleagues. And one of his workshops was to write letters to veterans and also children. And so all of his coworkers were working on their letters. And so I was also able to help him kind of prepare a little letter to send out and to share with his colleagues at his job. So even those little workshops that keep jobs united and together, a person with a disability, especially blindness, may feel isolated from those things. But when we're able to step in and just help a little bit to facilitate that, I think it goes a long way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Okay, I have Maggie. I have not introduced her here yet. I know she's chimed in a little bit, but I just want Maggie to introduce herself to all of us. And I heard that you have a lot of experience with accessibility compliance. So I just kind of want you to introduce yourself and kind of share what accessibility compliance is exactly.
Yeah, sure. So Maggie, I'm the Chief Project Manager and kind of one of the founders of Tech Translations. And then if you're thinking, why in the world is Tech Translations even in any accessibility? Because like you should just translate languages. Well, we consider those we provide the power to understand. It doesn't matter if the person speaks different language or the person is deaf, the person is blind, or there's anything else that we can help with. I guess I can start with a small story why or like what inspired me to be in this accessibility
I would love to hear that.
So my husband has a cousin, and she's legally blind, and she got diabetes, and she lost her vision at the age of 18. So she does have the memories of how things look. So it's a little bit different from a person that's just was born blind. But anyway, one time we met. It was like a family gathering, and then we decided to go to a Christmas market. And you're like, okay, so there's this, 5 people probably. How do you go to a Christmas market with a person who is blind? And like it's just so hard, because like you walk by those stands and you see all the pretty things, and I mean you're trying to explain them all, but and she's just like an amazing person. She's an ambassador for the blind in the state of Oklahoma. So I mean she's super easy to communicate to, and but it was just like such a amazing experience. She wanted to buy this piece of pottery, and she just asked us to explain everything that's on it, and had some texture, so she could feel it with her hands. And she would just ask like, hey, just can we tell me the colors? Like I can feel the leaves, but like, can you tell me if it's like the fall colors, if it's just green? Like it was just a mind-blowing experience. You're just like, well, this is how I see my world, but this is how this person sees her world, and it's like so different. So
well, how did you explain that? How do you explain that?
I mean, I was like, at first it freezes you because you're like, okay, what do I do? And then you're like, then you just I mean, she remembers the color, so that's a little bit different, you know. You can just explain, okay, this is a deep purple, you know, like, oh, this is bright red, and things like that, because it needed to fit in her yard, whatever she was putting it. And
Yeah.
she likes the details, you know. So it was, yeah, it was just a really interesting experience. That's kind of how it started, and then a couple of years ago, when we decided, like, okay, we can do it, like, it was me and Daniel, and he was like, okay, let's just do it, let's learn about it, and we can make this world a better place by the small things that we do, you know, like just doing the audio descriptions, doing the captions, doing the ISL, the American Sign Language, you know, card services. So just kind of decided to get into those.
That's neat. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That's a neat experience you got to have. What are some common compliance issues that organizations face, and how can you avoid like these pitfalls?
So if we are talking mostly about the blind today, I think that Brandy and Aubrey mentioned a lot. Just remember that, like, even using Zoom, which seems, I mean, Zoom is like a, you know, world-changing technologies that we all use, especially during COVID times. They came on, and it feels like, well,
Oh,
it
wait,
should be able to do everything.
Can I stop you for 1 second? Because I just
Sure.
want you to explain first what like compliance is, what accessibility
Okay.
and compliance is
So
first.
so compliance, everything that is public or everything that you even use inside the organization, it needs to be a government organization, let's say, like this. Of course, it cannot be enforced on businesses, you know. Then it's just like your personal decision how inclusive you want to be, but nobody will go against you if you're not. So everything should be understandable to the blind and to the deaf community. So the screen reader should be able to read it, like JAWS, like were mentioned, or there should be captions on the audios and on the videos, or transcripts for those.
Okay.
And the color contrast, like was mentioned here, you know, like if you go through even any, like if just take any of the free audit online for accessibility, you will see how many issues does your website have.
So you just want to make sure there's no like legal issues that.
It will be the issues like that, you know, there's not sufficient color contrast,
Okay.
you know, on your picture, like check the picture, you know, or there's no alternate text in the descriptions, you know, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So now, if you wouldn't mind just answering that question, and what are some common compliance issues that you feel organizations face, and how they can avoid them?
So one of the issues that actually is very common for especially the cities is the forms. Like Brandy was mentioning that as well. The forms that cannot be filled out. You know, we're like, you can go like whatever city you live in, you know, you just go to like, you know, I want whatever permit you want, you know, just like a small simple saying, you know, it takes you 2 minutes to fill out this paper. And you understand that this form is completely not fillable for the person who is blind. So just some things to keep in mind, you know, the form should be fillable. You know, try not to make everything into PDFs that you don't need to, you know, like it's just all easier just to put it as text instead of just, you know, link a ton of documents that are really hard to navigate. Okay, what do you click on this page when there's like 25 links, you know, and for all the forms, and just make it simpler, and just don't depend so much on the graphics and on the colors and on the pictures. You know, like we all are visual people, people that can see, you know, we just want to make everything pretty and those stuff, and just like even make less words, but just put everything in pictures, and just don't do that if you want people to be able to understand, and all people.
Do you have a specific example of a compliance challenge that you can think of, and how you were able to resolve that?
So that one, it was interesting when Daniel, he took a lot of course on accessibility, and so when he was done, we would look at something, like we would look at something together. He's like, oh, see, there's a problem, like they need to fix that. Like this is not having enough contrast, or like this is the wrong color, and then he would look at the, whatever documents is there, like, because he does a lot of the testing, and he's one of the guys, like the main guy for that. So he would see that a lot. I mean, just things that we don't think about. Things that we don't think about, just in our documents, if we're talking about the blind. And sometimes, like, we say, oh, you guys need the audio description. They're like, well, what is that? People are just thinking that, oh, just something describes some kind of audio. Well, which is not, like, so when you even search for it, or just search for some people that are just saying like, oh yes, I can provide that, without even knowing what it is, and those audio descriptions are just really strange, and make it even maybe harder to understand what's happening, and of course you say like, oh, well, maybe just we can just do the AI, like we don't need humans, we just do the AI, and then simple, in everything, like, I'll just turn on the captions, turn on the card services, which is this will be included in your Zoom and Google Meet and just different platforms. Audio description as well. It can be produced by ChatGPT, but just it's not, ChatGPT cannot understand the human as a human. Can see like, okay, one is how you see it, one is how Chat sees it. So we still need the humans to help the humans. So I think that's one of the challenges. Is like, we don't just depend on AI. Yes, we can get by with it, but it will not make anybody's life better. Like if we're talking about the blind,
and especially if their workplace, I feel like that they have to be really careful.
Or even if it's your community, you don't want this to be like, oh, we just got by because it's a legal regulation. So many times we hear like, oh, we just need to have the compliance for the compliance sake, so we can check off the box, and they're not thinking that they're actual real people that will use that. Or somebody was asking me, one time somebody was asking like, okay, so if we do something like, pretty much we just don't want to be sued. That's our only motivation to get this compliant. And you're like, well, that's sad, because like, just people don't even think that's actually about real people on the other side of the screen.
Yes. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, so Maggie, I understand that another area of service that is provided is accessibility for the deaf and hard of hearing. Can you share an overview of the general accessibility services that you provide for the deaf community?
Yeah, so it will be the American Sign Language, of course. And right now, it just, we even have it that you can call in, and it will be on demand. Like if you have somebody walk in your office and you need the sign language interpreter, so you can just connect with us, and we will just, it takes like 40, it can be like 40 seconds, and you can already connect to the interpreter. So that's like a game changer, that those people can actually get the service like right on the spot. And of course, the card services, we also, there's also a deaf interpreter. Like for people that are deaf from birth, they don't fully understand ASL. So you can even go deeper, like there's a special interpreter for them. So it will be like one person will interpret the spoken to the sign language, and then the second person will interpret sign language to another like deaf language of the deaf. That will be just interesting. It's interesting for us to even think about that, because as we always hear words, we're just used, or like, oh, but how do you interpret the bird is singing, to the person that has never heard a bird. So that just makes it a lot more interesting way to do it, and like how does they understand things. And of course the captions, just will include the actual audio and actual spoken, text, and as well as all the sounds, just kind of same with what you see in the movies. That's a little bit less applicable to the government, as a lot of times we just need to do the main things, but we can go really deep and describe everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, and one of the considerations, if you create your videos, that will be public. Don't do a lot of this like really whispering and things like that. because that definitely does not help those people to understand.
Yeah.
If you do it, like, just make sure that your sound is really good and that you are clear, you're not too fast, so that those people can also read it. Because if you just imagine you are so fast and then somebody needs to read it all on the screen, I mean, it makes it hard as well.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay. How have these services helped create a more inclusive environment in organizations? Maggie, what do you feel?
Sure,
What
I
have you
think,
noticed?
I think that people are just happier when they are understood and when they can understand, and they're not just like, some companies or some organizations don't even want to hire people with disabilities just because of all the hassle that it brings with it. But in really, just like, you can reach so much potential and the talent of of these people that for us we might not even think about it. So I think it just makes a happier place for everybody. It makes those people happier, and it also makes the colleagues happier as they know that that person is included and they can understand the person well. Because if you take two types of people, like, okay, as a person who is blind, and sometimes they receive those emails just written, by himself or by herself, and there's other people that are super attentive to detail. And so when you read this email, some people might get, like, if they don't know this person is blind, and they'll be like, okay, so what? Like, so why is it written like that? Like, something is not capitalized, especially like if we just go back to our, like, English teachers, like, she get this email, it's like, okay, wait a minute, this is not capitalized, this is missing a comma, this is missing a period, just be considerate of that. But having an assistant also helps, to make those emails look pretty for the people that do care about the detail, and for them it's really important.
Yeah, I love that. I've never really thought a lot about this. And I love how, everyone, even with people with disabilities, we all can make a contribution to this world. And so I love that it just makes them feel valued. It makes them feel included and just more a part of the society they live in. So I love that. So thank you so much for sharing that. I love just thinking about that, because growing up, I never thought about how, people with disabilities feel, how the blind and deaf feel, that they just have no contribution at all, and so I love that you offer these services to these people. I know it probably helps them feel a lot more valuable. So thank you so much for sharing all this. All right, I want to, and I think it's so important to just make sure that we're all more aware of the needs of people with disabilities. So thank you so much. I just want to, I think we had a comment. I'm going to open it up to the question and answers real quick. Okay, there was one that we didn't see. It says, should government contractors be utilizing accessibility in their websites and communications if they want to be compliant with federal government regulations? Who would like to talk about this?
Well, I guess it would be me. Yes. Government contractors. Okay, so government contractors, should we be utilizing accessibility? Well, we should try our best. Are we fully required to do that? No. Not legally, as we are not actually a government entity, but we should really try our best to make sure that we are compliant as well.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there any other questions that anyone wants to send out real quick while we're still here? I just want to thank you guys for being here and teaching us all about this. Isn't that mandatory? Is what mandatory? Can you expand on that?
Well, the government contractors will not fall under the same regulations as the government itself. So that's why then it's like, for any business, it's up to us how accessible we want to be. but of course we want to be accessible. So that's why we'll try to do our best to make our stuff accessible. But no, legally we would not be required to do that.
Okay, thank you. Do you guys have any closing remarks? Aubrey, Brandy, would you guys like to share anything with us that we may have missed?
I do. I just want to say, I've worked with so many individuals with blindness over the last few years, and they truly are an untapped resource for businesses. The unemployment rate for individuals with blindness is double people who do not have visual disabilities. So, but they are looking, they want to work. And it's really important that we take away those barriers that keep them from being able to work, taking away that assumption that they can't do a job just because they're not able to see. If you take away the barrier of not providing those audio descriptions, the accessible documents, things like that. If you take away those barriers, you have an amazing untapped resource that you can just pull from at any time.
Yeah. Thank you. I love that. Maggie mentioned that there's a really great quote by one of her clients, and it says, "A man with a vision does not require sight." And I love that. Love that so much. So I just want to say that if anyone, Aubrey, sorry, did you have anything you wanted to add before?
Yes, just briefly, some good information I found for businesses trying to increase their inclusive or make their workplace a more inclusive place to work. I found 3 key elements that could help with this. One is diversity, the practice of including various communities, identities, races, ethnicities, backgrounds in your business. Equity, the consistent and systematic, fair, just, and impartial treatment of all individuals. And accessibility, as was mentioned, the design, construction, development, and maintenance of facilities and information. Because as times progress, we hope to see more inclusive workspaces where we live and in our society. And if businesses were more informed of how to do that, we would see that begin to be formed faster. So I think it's really good that we're able to have a space like this to talk about how we can include that into the spaces that we work in.
Yes, I think that's really important. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, if you guys would like any more information, I would really suggest you reach out to Taika Translations. You could either email them at projects@taikatranslations.com, or you can visit them on their website, and it is www.taikatranslations.com. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Taika, for hosting this webinar here tonight. And I appreciate Brandy and Maggie and Aubrey for being here with us. So this concludes our webinar.